This week in the study, we will be talking about Daniel and how to thrive in messy circumstances. So I encourage you to read through the book of Daniel to get a better understanding of who he is. Now we're going to look at Daniel chapter 1, verses 5 through 8, coming from the New Living Translation. Verse 5 reads, "The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for 3 years, and then they would enter the royal service." Verse 6, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. Verse 7 says, "The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, and Azariah was called Abednego." Verse 8 says, "But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods." This week, we will be considering the messy life circumstances of Daniel, a young man who loved the Lord and sought to honor him in different situations. So, Daniel was born at a time in history when Israel was entrenched in idolatry. They did pagan idol worship, sexual immorality, and injustice, and all that had become a way of life among God's people. So, prophets of the Lord had warned the Israelites to turn away from these sins, but the people just would not listen. So, as a nation, they remained unfaithful to God. So Daniel was a young man when the army of King Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man in the world, conquered the Israelites' capital city. Daniel was one of the young men chosen to go back to Babylon with King Nebuchadnezzar. So Daniel was a prisoner of war who was separated from his parents. He was taken from his home. He was trained in Babylonian culture, including the language, the politics, and the pagan practices. So it turned out that Babylon was even more wicked than his homeland, Israel. So Daniel's life became very messy, but with God's help, he found a way to honor the God of Israel and be able to thrive in his difficult situations. So our lives will have messy, painful times as well. Sometimes they are going to be a direct result of our own poor choices, maybe a poor chosen word, a bad decision, or even an unhealthy lifestyle that we may have. But other times, life becomes painful through no fault of our own. It's not our fault sometimes when things happen. But either way, the question stands. Will we thrive in our messy circumstances just as Daniel did? So, during this 5-week study, we will be discussing 5 character values. Number 1 will be discipline. Number 2 will be humility. Number 3, integrity. Number 4, wisdom. And 5, courage. So these 5 values will help us navigate messy circumstances. Now, let's get down and talk about discipline. So if we look back at Daniel 1 and 8, we see that Daniel did not want to defile himself by eating the food and wine that were given. He was very, very intentional and made the decision not to conform when it came to choices that he believed would not honor God or that would compromise his values. So that in and of itself is discipline. So there will be many temptations we face no matter what or who we are or what our status may be. Because we're going to have those temptations because we live in a fallen world that does not always honor godly values. And we can see that from day-to-day living. So something to help us, instead of blending in with culture, we must resolve, as Daniel did, to honor God in every area of our lives if we want to thrive. He was able to be disciplined enough to not take in the wine and the food that was offered to him, and he chose a more healthy lifestyle. So join us this Wednesday night at 6 p.m. as we discuss the next character value, which will be humility.